Today we're going to take a look at the lightsabers used by everyone's favourite sand-hating Jedi, the Chosen One, Anakin Skywalker.
I don't like sand.
This video will cover basically everything you could want to know about Anakin's weapons, covering his entire life, from his time at the Jedi Temple all the way up to his death as Darth Vader. We will also take a look at the fate of each of these sabers, and any other characters who have used them. I did make a YouTube short on this topic before, and it was actually my first ever video on YouTube. But as it was a short, I couldn't go into as much detail as I would have liked to, and as so many of you politely pointed out, I missed out one of Darth Vader's sabers. So this video will rectify that and go into much more detail about each saber. Anyway, let's get started by taking a look at Anakin's first lightsaber.
This weapon is your life.
Contrary to what people often think, Anakin didn't always have the infamous Youngling Slayer 9000. And he actually had a different saber before that one, which debuted in episode 2. Anakin's first lightsaber was constructed by Skywalker himself whilst he was a Padawan to Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like most Jedi, Anakin journeyed to the planet Ilum to find his Kyber crystal, which would power his saber. After finding his crystal, Anakin constructed the rest of his lightsaber hilt around it. This saber introduced several design features which were common across all of Anakin's lightsabers, such as the angled emitter and the grip at the bottom. In addition, the Kyber crystal emitted a blue blade. Unfortunately, there are differing sources on exactly when Anakin made this saber. The Marvel Obi-Wan and Anakin comics suggest that Anakin was 12 years old. However, the Star Wars Absolutely Everything You Need to Know book says that he built the saber on Ilum when he was 14. Either way, he was in his young teens, and it is thought that this took place around the year 29 BBY. This saber was used by Anakin until it met its end in the droid factory in episode 2, whilst Anakin and Padme were attempting to rescue Obi-Wan from Count Dooku. A mechanical cutting arm on the production line sliced through the saber, rendering it useless.
Not again.
Later on in the film, during the Battle of Geonosis, the Jedi Nicanus Tassu armed Anakin temporarily with his spare lightsaber at the request of Mace Windu. This saber had a green blade, and the hilt was a standard Jedi design, very closely resembling hilts used by Ki-Adi-Mundi and General Grievous. Anakin used this saber throughout the rest of the first Battle of Geonosis, until partway through his duel with Count Dooku, where the Sith sliced the saber from Anakin's hand. Luckily, an incapacitated Obi-Wan had thrown Anakin the lightsaber that he had been using, given to him by the Jedi Sefjet Jasal. Alas, this saber didn't help Anakin much either, as he ended up losing part of his right arm whilst wielding it.
This is outrageous. It's unfair.
I don't think either of these lightsabers could really be called Anakin's, but he did use both of them in the film, so I think that they are worth mentioning. There are probably countless other lightsabers that Anakin wielded briefly at some point or another, mostly during his early years at the Jedi Temple, but these won't be mentioned in this video. Sometime after the first Battle of Geonosis, Anakin constructed his second lightsaber, also known as the Youngling Slayer 9000. Anakin used this lightsaber for the rest of his time as a Jedi, throughout both the Clone Wars and the events of Revenge of the Sith. This lightsaber had a similar design to his first saber, however with some differences, such as a more rounded emitter shroud. This lightsaber is probably the most recognisable saber in all of Star Wars, as it debuted as Luke's lightsaber in the original trilogy. The prop used during these films was made from the flash attachment of an old Graflex camera. At the end of his duel on Mustafar with his former master Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin lost this saber, alongside 3 of his limbs, when Obi-Wan destroys him with the high ground. To add insult to injury, Kenobi then took Anakin's saber and buried it on Tatooine alongside his own weapon during his exile.
I don't like sand.
During the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, Kenobi digs the sabers back up again in order to use his own, and by the time of A New Hope, Kenobi kept Anakin's lightsaber in his hut. In this film, Kenobi gives the saber to Anakin's son, Luke. Luke used his father's saber until episode 5, when Darth Vader severs his right hand off, causing both it and the saber it was holding to fall down the reactor shaft in Cloud City. And that's the last we see of the saber, until The Force Awakens, where somehow Maz Kanata has the saber in her basement on Takodana.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Rey finds the lightsaber, but refuses to take it after having a Force vision, resulting in Finn using the saber briefly. Rey does eventually claim the saber for herself, however, during the duel with Kylo Ren on Starkiller Base, and Rey continues to use the saber throughout the rest of the sequel trilogy. In The Last Jedi, Rey and Kylo split the saber cleanly in two with the Force, and the Kyber crystal visibly shatters, so that must be the last we see of it, right? Wrong. Before the events of The Rise of Skywalker, Rey slaps a bit of leather around it and calls it a day.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man.
At the end of episode 9, Rey buries this saber at the Lars homestead on Tatooine, alongside Leia's lightsaber, as she had constructed a new yellow lightsaber for herself at this point. Wow. Not only stealing Anakin's surname, but also reburying his saber in the substance he hates the most.
I don't like sand.
Speaking of Anakin, let's get back to him by rewinding a bit to the end of episode 3, where Anakin gets reborn as Darth Vader. At this point, Anakin no longer had his own lightsaber, as Obi-Wan had taken it, and as a result, he set about trying to replace his lost weapon. In the Darth Vader comics, shortly after the events of episode 3, Darth Sidious tasked Vader with killing a Jedi and bringing back their lightsaber's kyber crystal. This could then be bled and used to power a new Sith lightsaber for Vader. Vader tracked Jedi Master Kirak Infilla and dueled him, emerging victorious and claiming his lightsaber. This lightsaber had a curved hilt similar to that of Count Dooku.
You see those warriors from Hammerfell? They've got curved swords. Curved swords.
Upon his return to Mustafar, Vader bled the lightsaber crystal by pouring his hatred into it, resulting in the crystal colour changing from green to red. Vader wielded this lightsaber for a while, using it to duel adversaries such as the Grand Inquisitor and Jocasta Nu. However, this hilt was eventually destroyed on Cabaria when Vader encountered mercenaries hired to kill him. Vader did manage to keep the crystal from this saber, however, which he then constructed a new hilt for. This new lightsaber hilt that he constructed is the classic Vader saber that everyone knows, first appearing in A New Hope. This lightsaber had a design very similar to Anakin's first lightsaber, although with a darker colour scheme.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
Or, in reality, I should say that Anakin's first lightsaber has a very similar design to Vader's, as obviously Vader's was designed first. Similarly to Luke's lightsaber, this saber was made from a camera flash attachment as well, this time from a British MPP micro flash. Darth Vader used this lightsaber for the rest of his life, up until shortly before his death, when during his duel with his son Luke, the latter cut off Vader's hand. The hand fell into the reactor shaft of the second Death Star, with the lightsaber still in its grasp. After the fall of the Empire, Vader's lightsaber became a holy grail of sorts for a group of Sith cultists called the Acolytes of the Beyond.
You chose poorly.
These guys appear in several canon novels, such as the Aftermath trilogy and Shadow of the Sith, and at one point they managed to get their hands on a red saber, which they believed to be Vader's. It is unclear, however, if that is actually the case. Surely it can't be after this happened to the Death Star. But then again, the sequels would have you believe that this entire part of the Death Star survived. And that Maz Kanata managed to find Anakin's second lightsaber. Anyway, that just about covers all of Anakin Skywalker's lightsabers. Hopefully you learned something new and found the video interesting. If you did, I have lots of other videos on all sorts of Star Wars facts which you can check out. Thanks.